Welcome to the podcast. This is our first episode. This is Power Over Perfectionism. I'm your host, Cami, and we are going for today. I want to talk today about overcoming fear. And specifically, I'm going to tell you a story that I recently did that really freaking scared me, and I wasn't expecting to be so afraid. And as we're tuning in live here, if you're watching in on YouTube, go ahead and like and subscribe. And if you see my cat coming into the screen, that is Finley, and he is often here holding space and cuddling with me while I record. So I recently was up in Washington, D.C., and a friend of my husband invited us to go, and really she invited me, but my husband went along and watched. Invited us to go to trapeze. So it's literally called circus school. And she invited us to go on a trapeze. And I actually didn't really know anything about it. Like, I didn't know one way or the other. Like, I wasn't scared ahead of time. I wasn't very well educated. Like, we literally got invited, and then that very same day, we just went. So, I didn't have a lot of time to overthink it. I didn't have a lot of time to second guess it or research it. Now, I did wanna back out simply just because I was like, "I don't feel like leaving the house." But my husband is so great. He's like, "Well, we booked it, so we have to go." So anyway, if you're not familiar what trapeze is, the people that swing in the air on cables and they catch each other in the air? That's what it is. That's what trapeze is. And so we went there for our first class, and I walk in and the instructors are basically like, "Here you go, sign the waiver, put this belt on." And then they're like, "Okay, just do this, do this, do this, and you're gonna do this." And it was like very brief instruction. And then they're like, "Well, we're gonna do a backflip, we're gonna do a catch." And they gave us, like I said, very brief instruction. And I was kind of shocked that I'm gonna set my phone up over here. I was kind of shocked that they were gonna have us do all of that in the same day. I was kind of like, shouldn't we like practice for a while before we're going to do a backflip and a catch? But one of the things that was interesting was like all of the instructors were fairly nonchalant about it. Like, it's not a big deal. Just go ahead and do it. You're fine. And so that kind of also gave me like some interesting confidence on like, okay, well, if they think it's fine, like apparently it's fine. So just think about this. You wrap like this tight belt around your waist, and then there's a platform, and the platform is about 30 feet in the air. And there is a regular ladder. Like, there's nothing special about this ladder. There's a regular ladder going up, like the ladder that you would use to paint your walls. And the ladder is shaky AF. And I'm watching the other people go up the ladder. I'm like, wow, that ladder is like very shaky. So that was when the first fear set in for me in my body, like, okay, this ladder's shaky. And what's interesting about me is I've done a lot of things. So like I've done whitewater rafting, I've done snorkeling, I've done rappelling in Australia. I've been public speaking since I've been a kid. So like I've put myself in front of what most people would consider like scary, challenging things. I grew up as a tomboy, so there's not a lot of like physical things that I'm afraid of, except for scuba diving. I don't think I'll ever go scuba diving because of just claustrophobia. But I was a little bit shocked that my body was so afraid as we were walking, like we were climbing up this ladder. So we're climbing up the ladder, and like my body already starts to get shaky. My palms start to get sweaty, and you're clipped in, and then you have to come up on this platform, and then you go around the ledge of the platform. And basically, what they tell you is, okay, when you get up there, you're going to put your feet to the edge of the platform. You're going to put your hands out, and then you're going to push your hips forward, right? So it's kind of like doing a plank in midair. And if you just think about physiology and you think about our body and like our survival mechanisms, going to the edge of anything that's tall is never a good idea. Like, our body is like, nope, this is not a good idea. You should not be doing this. Definitely not. And that's what my whole body was doing. So when I got up there, my whole body was shaking. I could feel like the energy of fear inside of my body. And I was like remembering to breathe, but the guy at the top was like, "Hey, don't forget to breathe." And I'm like, "Yep." And then I had to like keep my eyes forward because if I looked down, it was causing like this entire trembling inside my body. And then what they do when you get to the top is they clip you in like on your belt, And then they like hold you by the back of your belt. And they say, "Okay, put your feet to the edge, put your hand out, put your hips forward." So essentially, like this bar is about 4 feet in front of you. So you can't reach it unless you lean over the edge to grab it. So you literally have to like lean your hips over the edge to grab the bar. You have one hand on the bar, and then you have one hand holding on to the bar that's on the platform. That's like the thing that's stabilizing you, that's holding you. So you're holding on to the bar that is keeping you there. And then they tell you to let go of that bar. And they're like, okay, lean your hips forward, take your other hand off, and grab the bar. This is the bar, like the trapeze bar that you hang on to with your hands. And then you're there literally facing down, like in a plank position. You're facing down, your hips are over, and they're still holding on to the back of your belt. Then they give you the commands to bend your knees. So they say, ready, hup, and you bend your knees. And then when they say hup, you jump off the edge. And you just pray that like you have enough grip strength to hold on to the bar. And then you're like free falling, right? Like you're swinging back and forth, you're swinging like a pendulum. And then you're listening for them to tell you the commands to take your feet up. And then you let your hands off. And then the other command was like, you do a backflip. So it was like legs forward, back, forward, up, and then let go. And I had the hardest time letting go because my body, like my limbic system took over. And the limbic system is literally your fight or flight. It's like, we're not safe, we're not okay. And I couldn't really hear the guy. Like he kept, like I could hear like, whoa, 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 whoa. He was telling me to let go. And I was like, I can't. And I was swinging back and forth like 6 or 7 times where he's like, "Let go." And I finally was able to let go. So that's what happened on my very first trip up to try the trapeze. Now, this is a funny story now, but I'm kidding you not. It was so scary. And it was so scary that so it was actually about like 9 women in the group. There was 1 man in the group that were first timers. And one of the men, he went up. It was his first time. He went up, and I don't remember if he was able to do 1 round. I think he did 1 round, and then he literally left. He's like, "I'm done. I can't do this." We'll just call him Chad. So now me and my husband joke, like, "Don't be a Chad." It's not his real name, but don't be a Chad. And I'll tell you why, like, I really wanted to bring this up to the podcast. I really wanted to teach on this, and I wanted to teach on it fresh, like, in the moment, like, right after I had done this, because I always think it's really powerful to still be in the energy of something scary, to be in the lesson of it. So, a couple of questions I was asking myself about, like, do I wanna do trapeze again? What was the experience like for me? And then I always look for correlations, right? So I'm a life and business coach. I'm always looking for what's the lesson here for life? What's the lesson here for business? And then what can I teach my clients and my followers, my audience about this? So, first of all, what's interesting is we did about 6 rounds. So you go up, you kind of like add on each time. So the first time you just do the swing and the leg tuck, then the next time you do the swing, the leg tuck and the flip, and then you practice that one a couple more times, and then your last 2 rounds is the catch where you're literally hanging from your knees, right? So like you're upside down, you're hanging, the bar is in between your knees. It's kinda like if you ever were a kid and you went on monkey bars and you hung upside down by your knees, that's what it is. So your hands are off, and then the catch is you're swinging, 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 and you swing and you extend your arms, and somebody else meets you on their bar, and you all guys grab hands, and then you let your legs go, and they're just holding you in the air. So that is what I was able to complete by the end of class, and I'm so freaking proud of myself for doing it because what I thought was interesting was that it was almost like the more I felt the fear, and then I was like, "Time to go again." I didn't wanna do it because I was like, "Well, that was really scary. I don't wanna do it again." Like, the fear wasn't going away. I wasn't actually getting more confident with these repetitions. And there was a girl beside me, like, we all had to go in order, and the girl beside me was like, "Hey, do you wanna go before me?" And I was like, "No, not really. I'm good." And I remember, like, the last 3 tries, like, there was so much fear in my body still, like, my body was just so activated that I was literally like, "I think I'm done. Like, I think I'm good. I'm good. Like, I experienced it. It was fun. It was fine. Like, I don't need to try the catch. Like, I'm good. We're done." And I remember having those thoughts in my head, and I was thinking about, okay, like, how did I overcome them, right? Because Chad was gone after the first try. He was gone. He was gone, done. And I was like, "Okay, what's the difference between, like, the Chad example and the Cami example?" Right? Like, the Coach Cami example. I was like, "Of course I'm gonna do this. Like, of course I'm gonna finish it out." And so even though like, I was telling myself, like, even though I'm scared, like, I wanna finish this. Like, I wanna challenge myself. I wanna get to the end. Like, I want to do it. And I think for a lot of you, my clients that I work with, you're high achievers. And high achievers, I think, do have a tendency to like, I want to achieve something, I want to push myself, I want to challenge myself. But the other side of this high achiever thing is like the perfectionism where you want to be good at it. For some reason, like you want to be good at it the first time and you don't want to fail, you don't want to fall, you don't want to mess it up. And I'll just tell you, like, I was messing it up the whole entire time. But for me, it wasn't about getting the trick right. I mean, I got it and that was very fun and it made it worth it. But it was really about I was asking myself like, why is this fear worth it? And I want you to think about like relating this back to your entire life. Because this is just a trapeze. It's just something I did on a weekend. Like it's not really that big of a deal. It's just like 2 hours of my life. But the way it applies to my entire life, I can see. And the way this thought process, right? For somebody like a Chad versus somebody like me or my clients is we are dedicated to a vision and becoming the person that we want to be. And so when I'm asking myself, like, why is this fear worth it? I knew it was just time for me to do something to shake up my routine, to shake up my pattern, right? We all have our own comfort zone. In my comfort zone, not gonna lie, I love being on the couch, watching TV, cuddling with my babies, like cuddling with my cat, cuddling with my dog, watching TV. And that feels really good for me. And it also feels like I deserve that. Like I had a hard week. I served all my clients. Like I kind of just deserve to lay on the couch. And I'm really glad that my husband challenged me to get off the couch, go do trapeze. Like I really didn't want to at 6 o'clock on a Friday, but he got me out of my comfort zone in that way, just of me being like, okay, let's go do something new. Let's go meet some new people. It'll be fine. Right. Like for that moment. But when I think of my overall vision, I've built my business, my coaching and speaking business, and I'm also an author. I self-published a book, and we'll talk about that in another episode. When I think about the reasons why I do anything I do, it's always for me. And the side benefit of it being for me is that I help other people. And when I say it's always for me, is it's always for me thinking of the past version of me. So I think of myself 10 years ago, like what did she need? Well, she needed a book. So I wrote a book. Now I think of my clients or I think of myself about 5 to 7 years ago. And I'm like, what does she need? And I'm like, oh, she needs a podcast. Like she needs a positive podcast in her brain, in her ears at all times, because that's what helped me. So everything I'm doing, I was thinking, okay, this is for me. And I always think of getting to the end of my life and feeling like I didn't leave anything on the table. And I remember having this at one point while I was on a plane and I saw this old couple in front of me. And I just had that moment of complete clarity where I started getting a little teary eyed, where I was like, I don't want to be in my old age regretting that I didn't write the book. I didn't write the podcast. I didn't go on the trip. I didn't jump out of the airplane. I didn't do the things that scared me. Like, I really just, that really is what drives me, right? Because I know that when I do that, I up level my confidence, my power, my presence, my impact by challenging myself to get out of my comfort zone. So when I was asking myself, like, why is this fear worth it? I just knew, right? I have a 100K business. I'm going to $1 million business. There's going to be a lot of fear hurdles that I'm going to need to get over. And challenging myself to do this trapeze and to keep doing it, even when I felt like giving up, gave me the opportunity to really coach myself during that time because my whole body was shaking. My hands were sweating. I was short of breath. I was like trembling. And what I did was I practiced grounding myself with my feet on the ground. I kept telling myself, you are safe. You are safe. You are safe. And I just did my deep breathing, deep into the belly. And I focused, not looking down, right? Like not looking at what could happen, but I just focused forward and I stayed focused the entire time. So for me, that's why it's worth it, is because I'm building up this version of me that has the capacity for these scary things. Excuse me. And then I also thought about This actually really connected me to my clients because I've been investing in coaches. So I first got fired in 2015. I got fired. I wasn't expecting it. It was early in the year, it was January. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a backup plan. And I had just a couple $1,000s in my savings. And I remember taking a big leap of faith. I invested in a coaching program, I invested in a business, and I spent about $3,000 of all of my entire savings. And I always have been able to be that person who like walks on faith. So I really felt like that was scary, but it still wasn't visceral scary, like the scariness that I felt in my body when I did this trapeze. So the reason I bring this up is because I was thinking about this is probably how my clients feel the first time they get on a consult call, the first time they talk about their dreams, the first time they talk about how they failed in the past and they feel shame. Like this is that fear that we all feel, and there's no judgment around what you feel it around, right? Like some people, I have the claustrophobia thing, but like some people have the fear of heights, some people have the fear of spiders, right? So it's like it's not a judgment around what the fear is, but it's knowing that the fear is present. And so as I think about that, as I think about you listening to this episode, I want you to really consider coming up against your fear to take the next step for you to have the life that you want. Because here's the deal, you can just continue to stay in your comfort zone. Like I could have just continued, I could have just been like, no, I want to lay on the couch and watch TV. And had I done that, right? Had I just traded that 3 or 4 hours of my life on the couch versus having this circus experience, I would have missed out on a great lesson, a great opportunity, and expansiveness that's going to carry through for the rest of my life. And that was just 3 or 4 hours of an experience. Imagine continuously being able to set yourself up to go out of your comfort zone, to get coaching, to move forward, to fall down, to get back up, and do this over a year or 2 or 3. And this is where I see my clients thriving. I had a client say yes to coaching with me. It was so scary. And then 3 years later, she left her job. She's full-time in her business. She self-published 2 books. She's been on international podcasts. She's traveled all over the globe. She never imagined that that was possible for her, but she took that leap of faith. And so that is literally what this is about, is the trapeze is that leap of faith, of believing in yourself to do something and telling yourself the right stories, guiding yourself to the thoughts that allow you to move forward instead of succumbing to the fear. Because the fear is essentially saying, don't do this, you're going to die, some version of that. And then the courage or the ability to coach yourself is to be able to process that fear, to be able to have the tools to know I will be okay, I'm capable, I can do this. So the second point I want to make is, do I have the tools to process this fear? So I want you to ask yourself that. Most people that don't take action don't have the tools to process fear. And if you don't have the tools, then of course you're actually going to be afraid of fear. So what are the tools that I'm talking about? These are the tools that you learn in life coaching. And I didn't know these until I was about 30 years old when I got a life coach for myself. I went to a retreat in Bali. I started practicing all of this stuff. And really what it is being able to sit with your emotions and open up vulnerably. That was the number one skill that I learned. I grew up as a tomboy. I grew up tough, right? And as perfectionists do, we usually want to pretend like everything's okay all the time. And that only gets us so far. It will get you far enough. Like I've seen a lot of my clients build successful businesses, have families, but typically what happens is they end up getting burnt out. They feel overwhelmed and they feel alone. And they technically have everything on the outside, but they don't feel emotionally or spiritually whole on the inside. So if that's you, I just want you to consider that. The vulnerability, the opening up to another human in your experience is so powerful. And in that in of itself, being witnessed, being seen, being held by another person, truly. And that was my trapeze experience. Like that's a really great example of coaching, is like that trapeze experience was like the guy was up there like, you're cool, you're fine, I got you. I know it's scary. I know you're scared, but you can do this. And he was literally holding on to me, like holding on to the belt, being like, "You can do this. Take some deep breaths." And so when we think about the tools for processing fear, the main modalities that I use are breath work, which I teach my clients how to do that in a breathwork session, or I teach them just how to do that in a mindfulness, light hypnotic somatic processing. And we do that on our coaching calls together when there's an emotion coming up. And I teach my clients how to sit with that emotion and breathe through it. Most of us want to avoid that feeling. So then we're going to avoid anything that could potentially make us fail because we're afraid we don't know how to deal with the feeling on the other side. I also use some modalities like EFT tapping, emotional freedom technique. And for a lot of my clients, we'll do some intuitive healing. So just knowing that you have multiple modalities gives you the courage and strength. You're like, I know I can get through this. I know I can overcome fear of failure, fear of success, because I have the tools and I have the support. And for me in that moment too, I had the support of the coaches that were there, like they were literally like circus coaches. Then I had my husband there who was cheering me on. And he was also like, "This isn't even a big deal. What are you worried about?" He was like very chill about it. And then I had his friend who literally has been doing circus for years, and she was hyping me up. She's like, "You got this." And she was really giving me a lot of coaching on technique. And so it really was important for me to have that audience because I was thinking about it like, had I been there alone by myself, had my husband not been there, had his friend, who was an expert trapezist, not been there, I might have walked away. I might have like let my intrusive thoughts win and be like, "Nah, I'm good. I don't like this. Bye." I might have been a Chad. So like I'm making a joke a little bit with a Chad here, but like I came in ready to go because I had a support system. And so when you're thinking about like what is it that you want to achieve, how are you going to get there? You want to have that support system. And a lot of times we say it's going to be our friends and family, but it's not the same as having a skilled coach. It's not the same as having somebody who knows how to do the things that you're about to do, who's overcome the thing that you've had to overcome. So there is something here about somebody knowing that you've got this, somebody believing in you. And typically what happens is your friends or family will just be like, "Yeah, let's go. We don't want to be here either." And they'll kind of enable you, or they will project their own fears onto you. So in thinking about that, the third question I want you to ask, and this is what I asked myself too as I was going through this process, is who do I want to be when the fear comes up? Who do I want to be when the fear comes up? And the answer is courageous. And I think a lot of people love this idea of bravery or courage, but bravery and courage means that there is fear present because it means you have to literally look in the face of fear, feel the fear, see what could happen, and decide to step up willing to stand strong, to stand tall, to take the next step. That's what courage is. And courage is always paired with fear. So if you want to do something big, if you have a big vision and you have a big dream, fear is coming along with you. So you better get really comfortable with fear being with you. And I've said this before and it didn't resonate with me. Like I didn't really have this visceral fear in my body before, like to this extent. This was truly the scariest thing I've done in my life. And so what I've always coached my clients on is, fear, we're not going to let fear drive the car, right? So you are the one driving the vehicle. You're going to where you want to go and you put fear in the back seat. Right? You put fear in the back seat. It's kind of like when you got a bunch of kids and they're talking, they're yelling and you can kind of tune them out. That's typically my relationship with fear is like I'm able to put it in the back seat. But for this experience, that fear was in the front seat with me and it was trying to grab the steering wheel. Like it was aggressively coming for me. And so I also think that's really important to have experiences where that fear is heightened even more and to allow yourself to be like, I still have power over this. I still can focus on my somatic practices, my body practices. I know what helps to relax my body, the thoughts that I know that keep me calm, and where I'm going to focus my eyes, where I'm going to put my vision, what I'm going to be thinking about as this fear is coming up. And that, my friends, is a practice. And you get better with it at time. And eventually, the things that you once were so afraid of, you won't be afraid of it anymore. So that's what I want you to think of is think about who do I want to be when fear comes up? And practicing that courage is the way that you're going to get better at it. So that's a wrap up for this episode. And I want to invite you, if you're feeling afraid, if you're feeling vulnerable, if you're maybe feeling shame, if you know you have a vision and a dream and you want to move forward on something, but you find yourself kind of stuck in your comfort zone, I want to invite you to reach out to me to book a free consultation. On this free consultation, it's 60 minutes fully dedicated to you. It's completely free. There's no obligation to sign with me as a client. And oftentimes clients are like, "Can I pay you for this?" And I'm like, "No, this is my gift. This is what I do." And the reason I do is because I just want to have conversations with people who see their vision, they see their power, they build their beliefs in themselves, and they know, okay, this is possible for me. I want to just help you tap into possibility. And if it ends up that we're a good fit to work together, we'll have that conversation on the call. But I want you to consider that this may be your thing, you being willing to have a conversation with someone to reveal things going on in your life that maybe you haven't revealed to other people. I had a client say to me today, like, she's like, "I'm highly ambitious, I'm highly driven, and there's things on my vision that I don't even know if I should say out loud. They're so big." And so sometimes we're afraid of our vision. It feels too big. And so I want to have that conversation with you to talk about, okay, let's break this down. Like, what does it look like? If this is something you really want in the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, let's have that conversation now and begin becoming the person who takes the actions, who makes the connections, who does the reach outs, who overcomes adversity in order to achieve that goal and that vision. So I want to be that person, that sounding board that says, yes, you can do it. Yes, it's possible. Just if I'm the first person you've ever shared this vision with. And then at the end of the call, you'll have a plan on these are the things that I see that would take for you to get there. So you can head to my website linked below, book a free consultation, and allow yourself to take the first step to overcoming that fear, becoming courageous, becoming the person who has the things that you want to have in life. It's absolutely possible. And I'll talk to you soon.